Your eyes can lie to you, but your gut usually doesn't. I grew up in a quiet town by a lake most people avoided. It wasn't the stories that kept people away. It was the fact that too many just didn't come back. Every few years, someone went missing. A swimmer, a fisherman, a couple on a night drive. The police always gave the same explanation. Someone slipped, lost their balance, maybe had too much to drink. But everyone who'd lived there long enough knew something was off. The numbers just didn't add up. I hear different stories about that lake. Every time someone went missing, the whole town would start talking again. Most of it was gossip, things people heard from a friend of a friend, but everyone seemed to have their own version. Some blamed the current under the surface, the kind that looks harmless but pulls you sideways. A few talked about old debris under the water, wire, branches, things you could get caught on. And then there were the ones who just called it a bad luck spot, like no matter how careful you were, something always went wrong out there. When I was a kid, my dad used to fish there. He always packed up before it got dark. If I asked why, he'd just say, "The roads aren't great at night." Maybe that was true, but I knew he didn't want to be near that lake after sunset. By high school, I stopped paying attention to the stories. Small towns exaggerate things, and the lake talk felt like one of those habits people couldn't let go of. In my early 20s, I started going out there again, mostly to clear my head after work. It was quiet, wide open, nothing but trees and water. For a while, it felt peaceful in a way I didn't get anywhere else. Looking back, I should have known better considering what I knew about that lake. Ryan and I went to the lake after work. We'd both had a long day, so we brought a couple rods and some beers and headed out just before sunset. It was quiet, no boats, no one else around, just us near the shoreline. We set our stuff down, cracked a beer, and started talking while the lines sat in the water. After a while, Ryan pointed at an old buoy maybe 30 yards out. I told him that's where the drop-off started, the same spot people always warned about. He laughed and said, "Guess that's where everyone disappears, huh?" He stood up a few minutes later, still joking, and said he was going to prove the stories were garbage. I told him not to bother, but he grinned and stepped into the water. He walked out a little further until the water was up to his waist. He turned back toward me, splashed some water, and laughed. I thought I saw the line move. Maybe I'd hooked something, so I reeled in a little to check. Then I heard him. I couldn't tell if he was laughing or yelling. When I looked up, Ryan was gone. He'd done that kind of thing before, going under just to mess with me. I waited a bit for him to pop back up, but he didn't. Something didn't look right. I called his name a couple times. Nothing. I swam out toward where he'd been, shouting for him the whole time. Every few seconds I stopped, waiting for him to come up, but he never did. I started to panic, calling his name over and over. I was starting to feel tired, and I couldn't see him anywhere. I slowly swam back, still calling his name and hoping he'd answer. I called 911 as soon as I got out of the water. I kept watching the lake while I talked to the dispatcher, hoping Ryan would swim back. About an hour later, the rescue teams and police showed up with lights and boats. They searched through the night and found Ryan early the next morning, not far from the buoy. The police said he probably went under fast and got caught on something. When they pulled Ryan out, the sun was already up. Everything looked too normal for what had just happened. The water was still, the air warm. I remember thinking how wrong that felt. The police asked a few questions, but I barely remember what I said. Most of that morning is a blur. Sirens, radios, people standing around not knowing what to say. I drove home and sat in my truck for a long time before going inside. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. People in town talked about it for a week before the stories started changing. Some said he was drunk, others blamed the lake. Every version changed a little until it turned into another story people told about that place. After that, nobody really mentioned Ryan by name. I stopped going near the lake, couldn't even drive that road for months. When I finally did, I caught myself looking toward the water. It looked the same as it always did, quiet, harmless, like nothing had ever happened. People like to call what happened an accident, but that's not the word I use. We were being careless, stupid even. It doesn't matter what the police report says. He was joking, and I didn't stop him. That's what I think about most. It's been years now, and the lake hasn't changed. People go there to fish, camp, and swim. Every time someone new goes missing, the stories start again. I don't believe in curses, but I understand why other people do. I know it was a stupid thing to do, but I still find myself looking at the water like I'll see him there. I've been underwater more times than I can count. You hear all kinds of things down there. Engines, echo, even my own breathing. But the noise I heard in that reservoir was different. I used to volunteer with a small dive team in my county. Most of the time it was routine work, pulling out lost gear, vehicles that sped into the water, and the occasional search for missing people. A few summers back, we got a call about a car that had gone into the reservoir on the north side of town. The place used to be a valley before they dammed it off in the 70s. People still call it the Drowned Village. They say when the water gets low, you can see the tops of old houses under the surface. I'd heard the stories my whole life, but I never thought about them much until that day. It was supposed to be a simple job. Go down, find the car, mark it for the tow crew. I didn't know it was going to be the one dive I'd still think about years later. We got to the reservoir just after sunrise. The water was calm, but there was a thin layer of fog sitting on top of it. A couple of county trucks were parked near the edge, and one deputy waited while we suited up. My partner Dave ran through the usual checks while I tested my regulator. It hissed a little louder than normal when I opened the valve, but the gauge read fine. I made a quick note about it in the logbook, but didn't have time for details. We were already behind schedule for the search. The spot where the car had gone in wasn't far from the access ramp. You could still see the skid marks and the fresh cut in the grass leading down to the water. I couldn't figure out how someone ended up all the way out there. We clipped our lines in, gave the ready signal, and started down. The first few feet were clear, but the deeper we went, the thicker the silt got until the light disappeared completely. The only thing left was my light. At about 20 feet, Dave's line tugged twice, the signal that everything was fine. I tugged back once, same reply. A few seconds later, we leveled off and started the sweep. We moved slow, keeping the line between us tight. Visibility was maybe 3 feet. The bottom was uneven, soft in some spots and dropping off in others. Every step kicked up more silt, making it even harder to see. I thought I heard a faint hiss through the regulator and checked my gauge again. The numbers looked fine, but every breath felt heavier than the last. I tried to slow my breathing, but it didn't help. Dave signaled that we needed to hurry. The crew on shore was waiting for us to find the location of the wrecked car. I forced myself to stay calm and kept moving. My own light was the only thing I could see. I was trying to hold it still, but my hands were shaking. The light kept drifting, and I couldn't tell if I was turning or if the whole place was moving around me. Then I heard a noise, faint, kind of a thud in the water, coming every few seconds. I couldn't tell what it was or where it was coming from, so I kept the light moving and tried to focus on the job. As the silt cleared a little, I thought I saw something ahead of me. Maybe I'd found the wrecked car. I moved toward it without thinking. When I finally got close, the light caught on a broken clock face hanging off the side. Then the sound came again, louder and clearer this time. It was the bell from the clock tower all along. I don't know why, but I pushed in closer. I wanted to see what was inside. Through the cracks, I thought I saw movement. Maybe gears, I couldn't tell. The bell kept going and every hit made me jump. I started swimming around to get a better look when something pulled me back. I couldn't tell if it was the line or the current or something else. I kicked to break free, but it tightened again, even harder this time. I turned around trying to see what caught me, but I couldn't see anything through the silt. I tried to breathe, but no air came through. The gauge showed pressure, which made no sense. My chest tightened fast and my head started to spin, and I couldn't figure out what was going wrong. I felt everything slipping, the weight, the noise, even the light. The last thing I heard was the bell. I woke up on the dock with a mask over my face and people shouting around me. Dave was still in his gear, kneeling beside me. He told me my tank had a hairline crack near the valve, small enough that the gauge still showed pressure, but it had been leaking the whole time. They pulled the car out later that day, right where I swore the clock tower had been. When I asked if anyone had heard a bell or seen the tower, everyone just shook their heads. I took a couple of months off and went back to diving after that, but it never felt the same. I checked my gear 3 times before going in, and I stopped volunteering a few months later. It's strange how one dive can change everything. They said it was just a bad tank, and I know they're right, but sometimes when I'm underwater, I still think I hear that bell.